I always thought I had a pretty solid marriage with Emily. We'd been together for about 8 years, and for the most part, I'd say things were good, normal fights, lots of laughs, a lot of the usual stuff. We had a house out in the countryside, and Emily loved the quiet, loved the peace. She'd always been a bit of a bitch, honestly, but she had her moments. She was sharp-tongued, sure, but I figured that was just her way of keeping people at arm's length. Still, I trusted her. Or at least I did until recently. It all started about 3 months ago when I began noticing little things, texts on her phone that she'd hide quickly, a little more distance when I'd try to cuddle her, her working late more often than usual. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe stress at work, maybe she was just tired. But then I started noticing her behavior changing in a way that didn't quite add up. She became more secretive, more defensive when I'd ask about her day. She'd snap at me for no reason, and her mood swings got worse. I got suspicious, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Then one night I decided to check the security cameras we had set up around the property. Nothing suspicious usually, just deer and raccoons scurrying around. But I noticed something strange on the footage from a couple of weeks ago. Around midnight there was a figure, blurry but definitely a person, moving close to the house near her home office. I rewind and watch again. It's her. I see her sneaking out of the house, then a man I didn't recognize. They're talking quietly, then they disappear behind some trees. I felt my stomach tighten. Who the hell was this? That's when I got the full picture. I started digging through the footage more carefully, and I found something even more shocking. Several nights I'd caught her sneaking out, always under the cover of darkness. I'd seen her meet with him, who I later found out was a wildlife photographer named Jake, who'd been documenting endangered species on our property. Apparently, Emily had been working with him, but not just for her job. She'd been having an affair with him during their habitat monitoring overnight stays. She lied to me about those trips, said it was just work. That was her story, but it was all bullshit, of course. I couldn't believe it. She lied about everything, about her work, about where she was going. She lied to my face for months. And the worst part, I could see in her eyes, hidden behind that bitchy smirk, that she knew exactly what she was doing. She thought she could get away with it, that I wouldn't find out. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt sick, furious, and helpless all at once. I didn't know what to do at first. Just stood there staring at the screen, replaying the images over and over, trying to process it. My wife, my partner, was cheating on me with some guy I didn't even like. A guy who was basically the kind of guy I'd expect her to be sneaking around with, an outsider, a stranger, someone who was supposed to be working but was secretly screwing my wife behind my back. And that's when I realized things would never be the same. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed a plan. Because she wasn't the type to admit she was wrong, not without some serious push. And I was damn sure I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I needed to figure out how to handle this, how to make her pay for what she'd done. That's where I was, standing in the living room, staring at her, knowing I'd uncovered her secrets and feeling every ounce of anger and betrayal boiling inside me. The next day, I couldn't get the images out of my head. I kept going back to that night, her sneaking out, that man Jake, the secret meetings. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach repeatedly. I had 1,000 thoughts racing through my head: anger, sadness, confusion, a deep sense of betrayal. I kept asking myself how long this had been going on, how I'd missed all the signs. The worst part was knowing she had lied to me every step of the way, making me think she was busy with her work, when in reality she was with him. That morning I decided I couldn't keep it bottled up. I needed answers, and I needed to confront her. I got up early, made some coffee, and sat in the living room waiting for her to wake up. When she finally did, she looked at me with that usual bitchy smirk, like she knew she'd gotten away with something. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Emily, I know about Jake, I know about everything." Her face flickered for a second, shock maybe, or just that fake anger she always put on. "Oh, come on," she snapped, rolling her eyes. "You're overreacting. You're crazy. You're just jealous because I have a job that's a little more interesting than your boring-ass life." I could see her trying to play it off, but her voice was a little shaky. That made me angrier. I pressed her harder. "You think I don't know about the nights you've been sneaking out? I've seen the footage. I know about Jake. How long has this been going on, Emily? How many nights have you been lying to me? She scoffed and crossed her arms. You're paranoid. It's just some stupid project I was working on. We were doing habitat monitoring, okay? It's nothing special. He's just a guy who's passionate about animals. I didn't sleep with him, and I sure as hell didn't cheat on you. Her words sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced them in front of a mirror. It didn't sit right with me. I could tell she was lying, but her tone, that bitchy, dismissive tone, just made me see red. I stood up, voice trembling, part from rage, part from heartbreak. You think I'm stupid? I've seen the footage, Emily. You don't get to lie your way out of this. I trusted you. I loved you. And you've been cheating on me with some guy who's been sneaking into our property like some damn wildlife thief. You're the one who's been lying, not me. I saw everything. She rolled her eyes again like I was some pathetic fool. You're overreacting. You're just being paranoid. Jake's just a friend, okay? We were working late. It's not what you think. You're just insecure like always. But I could hear the edge in her voice, the defensiveness. She knew she'd been caught and she didn't care. That's when I realized that trying to reason with her was pointless. She was already committed to this lie and she had no shame. The emotional fallout hit me hard. I felt like I was falling apart inside. The woman I'd shared my life with for nearly a decade. The woman I'd trusted with everything. She was a bitch about everything. Yet somehow in this moment I saw her in her purest form. Selfish, manipulative, and utterly unfaithful. The betrayal cut deep. It wasn't just the affair. It was the fact she thought she could lie her way out of it, as if I'd forget what I saw or ignore my gut instinct. I remember sitting down on the couch, staring at her while she kept insisting I was crazy. I felt a mixture of hurt and fury. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her and demand the truth. But I also knew I had to stay calm, think clearly, because I wasn't the kind of guy who'd just blow up and lose everything. No, I wanted to punish her, make her regret what she'd done. I'd been through enough to know that betrayal like this doesn't just go away overnight. It stays with you, gnawing at your insides until you find a way to deal with it. And I knew I wouldn't let her slide, not without some consequences. As the day went on, the tension only grew. I kept replaying the footage, trying to figure out how I was going to handle this, whether I'd confront her again or just leave her to stew in her lies. My mind was racing, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let this slide. Not without some kind of retaliation. That's when I started planning my next move. Because if she thought she could cheat on me and get away with it, she was dead wrong. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that I couldn't just sit back and pretend everything was fine. Emily's attitude that morning only confirmed she had no intention of admitting to her lies. She kept brushing me off, acting like I was some paranoid idiot. That bitchy smirk never left her face, even when I pressed her about Jake. It was like she enjoyed throwing her weight around, making me feel small. Honestly, it made my blood boil. I knew I had to do something more than just confront her verbally. I needed to find a way to make her feel some of the pain she'd caused me, something to show her I wasn't going to let her get away with this. And that's when I remembered that I'd kept some of the footage saved on a different device, just in case. I'd seen enough to know I could use it, but I had to think carefully about how to do it. I didn't want to come off as some emotional wreck. I wanted her to see the damage she'd done and realize she couldn't just lie her way out of it again. Later that day, I started setting up a little plan. I didn't want to blow everything up all at once, but I knew I had to hit her where it hurt. First, I made copies of the footage, just in case she found a way to mess with the originals. Then, I looked into how to access some hidden cameras I'd set up around the property for safety. I'd always been a little paranoid, more because of how Emily acted than anything else, but now I was grateful I'd thought ahead. Those cameras could give me enough evidence to really make her regret what she'd done. I also started gathering some of her personal stuff, her phone, her laptop, anything that could hold clues or prove she'd been lying to me. I didn't want to be sneaky just for the sake of revenge, but I knew that if I didn't take some control of the situation, she might try to spin everything even further. The thing was, I didn't want her to walk away feeling like she'd won. I wanted her to see that I was serious, that I was hurt, and that I was done pretending everything was okay. By nighttime, I had a plan in mind. I'd wait for her to go to bed, then I'd play the footage for her, slowly, deliberately. I knew it would blow her mind, especially since she thought she'd covered her tracks so well. I wanted her to see herself sneaking out, the way she giggled with Jake, the way she touched him like he was the only person who mattered. I'd make her watch the clips of her lying about everything, about her work, about her friendship, about her fidelity. I wanted her to see herself for what she really was, a lying, cheating bitch who thought she could get away with anything. But even as I prepared for that moment, I felt a deep sense of sadness. I'd built a life with Emily, shared dreams, plans, quiet nights. And now all of that was crumbling. I kept asking myself how someone I loved so much could do this, how she could lie and cheat and still have the arrogance to deny it. I felt betrayed, angry, and strangely numb. I realized that the worst part wasn't just the affair itself. It was the fact that she had no remorse, no shame. That made me wonder how much more she was hiding. Maybe she'd lied about the affair, about everything, and I'd only just scratched the surface. That night, I sat alone in the dark, staring at the grainy footage on my laptop, waiting for her to fall asleep. I knew this wasn't just about catching her. It was about reclaiming some sense of control. It was about standing up for myself, about showing her that I wasn't a fool. I had given her everything, my trust, my love, my life, and she'd thrown it all away for some fleeting thrill with a man who probably thought he was some kind of hero. Well, I was done being the fool. She was about to get a wake-up call she wouldn't forget, and I was determined to make sure. She knew exactly how much she'd screwed up. That night I waited until I was sure Emily was asleep. Her breathing had slowed, her usual snarky mood replaced by quiet, deep sleep. That was my cue. I slipped out of bed carefully, making sure not to make a sound. I grabbed the laptop, the footage I'd downloaded earlier, and the hidden camera feeds I'd been monitoring. My hands were trembling slightly, but I kept my head clear. This was the moment I had been planning for, the moment she'd finally see herself for what she truly was. I set everything up in the living room, dimmed the lights, and pressed play on the footage. The images flickered on the screen, showing her sneaking out in her pajamas, her face lit by the moonlight. Then came the clips of her whispering with Jake, the way she touched him, those small, intimate gestures that she thought no one else saw. I watched her lie to my face, deny everything, while the footage told the real story. Her words about just working late, her excuses about being busy, all shattered in the glow of those grainy images. I felt a strain, mix of anger and heartbreak. She'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer. But what hit me hardest was her smug look when I confronted her earlier that day, like she'd already decided I was some naive fool who'd never figure it out. Watching those clips, I realized she'd been manipulating me from the start, pretending to love me while she was screwing around with Jake, probably during our supposed date nights, in the woods, in our own backyard. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I'd shared everything with her, my hopes, my fears, my trust, and she'd just thrown it away like it was nothing. As I watched her in that moment of betrayal, I felt tears prick my eyes, not because I was weak, but because I'd lost someone I thought was my partner. She was a selfish, two-faced bitch who thought she could get away with murder. The worst part was her attitude, how she'd lie, scold me, and then turn around and do it again. That realization made my blood boil even more. I'd never been a guy who took betrayal lightly, and I wasn't about to start now. I kept replaying the footage, pausing here and there to study her expressions, how she looked so comfortable, so in her own world of lies. I knew that if I wanted to make her feel the pain, I had to do more than just show her the videos. I needed to find a way to make her understand that I wasn't going to be her fool anymore, that she couldn't just cheat and lie and expect me to accept it. Not after everything. This was about respect, my respect, and the fact that she had taken it for granted. Once I was done watching, I saved the footage on multiple drives, just in case she got suspicious and tried to erase anything. Then I sat back, exhausted. Part of me wanted to wake her up and shout at her, demand explanations, tell her how much she'd hurt me. But I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. Instead, I decided to hold on to this evidence for now, to figure out my next move. I was angry, yes, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. She thought she was smarter than me, thought she could cheat and lie, then walk away unscathed. But she was wrong. I was done playing the fool. In the end, I knew I had a choice: continue to pretend everything was okay and let her keep her secrets, or finally take control and do something about it. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. That night, I made a silent vow. I'd confront her again, but this time on my terms. She'd see that her lies didn't just hurt me, they'd cost her everything. Whatever was coming next, I was ready for it. I just hoped she was too, because I wasn't going to keep pretending I didn't know the truth. The following morning, I woke up feeling like a different person. The adrenaline from the night before hadn't quite worn off, and I knew I was at a crossroads. I had the evidence in hand: the footage, the hidden cameras, everything I needed to finally reveal her lies. But I also knew that confronting Emily with all that raw truth could go either way. She might deny everything, spin a new story, or try to manipulate her way out of it again. Still, I couldn't keep pretending that I didn't know. I had to face her head on. I stayed in bed for a while, listening to her get ready, her bitchy attitude on full display even in her morning grumbles. When she finally came into the living room, I looked straight at her, my face cold and hard. She tried to flash that nasty smirk like she thought she was clever, but I wasn't having it. I pulled out my laptop and hit play on the footage, letting the images tell the story she had tried to hide. She froze for a second when she saw herself sneaking out, her face illuminated by the screen. Then her eyes darted around, trying to find a way to spin this. She opened her mouth to lie again, but I cut her off. "Don't even try," I said. "I've seen enough. I know about Jake. I know about your little secret trips in the middle of the night. You've been lying to me this whole time, Emily. How long has this been going on?" She looked furious, then suddenly that fake bitchy smirk turned into a nervous glare. "You're overreacting," she snapped. "It's not what you think. Jake's just a friend. We were working late, like I told you. You're paranoid, and honestly, I do have to listen to this bullshit anymore." I could see her trying to dismiss everything, but I wasn't about to buy her bullshit. "Working late, that's what you call sneaking out to meet a guy in the woods? Come on, Emily. How stupid do you think I am?" I was losing patience, my voice rising. "You've been having sex with him, haven't you? While I was here thinking you loved me. While I was pretending everything was normal. You really think I'd believe your lies after watching this?" Her face twisted like she was trying to hold it together, but I saw the cracks. The anger, the guilt, the shame, all bubbling just beneath her bitchy exterior. "You don't know what you're talking about," she spat. "You're just jealous, insecure, as usual. Jake's just a guy who's into wildlife, okay? It's not some big deal. I never cheated on you." That was the moment I snapped. I stood up, face red with rage, and took a step toward her. "You're full of shit," I said. "You've been lying from the start. I trusted you, Emily. I gave you everything I had, and you threw it all away for some guy who probably thinks he's a hero because he took pictures of endangered animals on my land." I pointed at the screen, "And I saw how eager you were to hide it, to lie about everything. You think I'm stupid. I know the truth now, and I'm done." She stared at me, her eyes blazing with fury, probably trying to come up with some kind of excuse or lie, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I felt hollow inside, like I'd been punched in the heart 1,000 times. How could she do this? How could she betray me so badly, then lie about it like she was the victim? I'd never felt so angry, so betrayed in my life. I didn't want to break her, not physically, but I knew I had to send a message, that this wasn't going to be swept under the rug. I told her flatly, "We're done. I want you out of my house, and I never want to see or hear from you again until you've got your shit together. Don't contact me. Don't try to lie your way out of this. I've got proof, and I'm done pretending I don't know the truth." Her face twisted into a sneer like she was trying to act tough, but I saw the cracks in her armor. She spat a few more lies, called me paranoid, accused me of being crazy, but I didn't care. I'd finally taken control of the situation. The woman I thought I knew was gone. All I had left was the raw, painful truth, and the hope that someday I could rebuild myself from the wreckage she'd left behind. As she stormed out, yelling some last-minute insults, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with heartbreak. I knew this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I'd have to pick up the pieces and learn how to trust again. But for now, I was just glad to be rid of her. I had finally taken a stand, and that felt like the only real victory I needed. After Emily left, the silence in the house was deafening. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the spot where she'd stood, feeling a strange mix of emptiness and relief. I'd spent so many years building a life around her, trusting her, loving her, only to find out that it was all a lie. It hit me hard, but somewhere deep down, I knew I'd made the right choice. I couldn't keep living in lies, pretending everything was okay when I knew she'd been betraying me behind my back. In the days that followed, I started gradually pulling myself back together. I removed her things, changed the locks, and cleaned up the house, making it clear that I was done with her. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, but I refused to let her see me broken. Instead, I focused on my work, on the land we shared, and on figuring out how I was going to rebuild my life from this mess. I realized I'd been giving so much of myself to her, only to get betrayal in return. It was a hard lesson, but one I'd carry with me forever. The strange thing was, once I had that proof, those grainy images of her sneaking out and whispering with Jake, it felt like I'd finally taken control of my own narrative. I didn't need her validation anymore. I knew the truth, and that was enough. I started setting up cameras around the property, not to catch her again, but to protect what was mine. I realized I'd been too trusting before, too willing to ignore the signs. Now I was taking steps to ensure I wouldn't be blindsided again. Over time, I learned to accept what had happened. It took weeks of reflection, anger, sadness, and finally acceptance. I stopped blaming myself for trusting her, and I refused to let that bitterness consume me. Instead, I focused on rebuilding not just my house, but my sense of self. I found new hobbies, spent more time with friends, and even reconnected with some old passions I'd neglected. The pain of betrayal was still there, but I refused to let it define me. Looking back, I realized that this experience taught me a lot about trust and resilience. I learned that people can surprise you in the worst ways, but you have to hold on to your own integrity and self-respect. Emily's betrayal was a blow, but it also opened my eyes to the kind of person I don't want to be with or around. I won't lie, it hurt like hell. But in the end, I came out stronger. I learned that revenge isn't about hurting others, it's about reclaiming your own dignity. So if there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through something similar, it's this: don't let betrayal break you. Use it as a lesson, a catalyst for change. Trust is fragile, yes, but your strength is. You can rebuild, you can move on better, wiser, and more cautious. And most importantly, never let anyone make you feel small. Take back your life, your peace, and your self-respect. That's the real victory.